Estate Photography Podcast with Mike Muriello. This is an interview with Scott Hargis, who is a real estate photographer located in California. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, could you just first start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do?
Sure. I describe myself as a freelance interiors and architectural photographer. Um, I, I I don't know what to say here.
You take pictures, right?
I take pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, because you say it's architectural and interior photography. How did you sort of find yourself in this field, this
Okay.
specific niche?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, I mean, I consider us all to be advertising photographers.
Hmm.
And then from there, I think you just say we specialize in interiors.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I came to photography pretty late in life, so I was actually a general manager for Kinko's for 15 years,
No way.
and yeah, and that was, as it turns out, about 6 years longer than I probably should have been in there. But when I was coming to the end of that and realizing that that wasn't working for me, I really needed to find something else to do. I was really stifled. The company just kept getting more and more corporate,
Okay.
and so I started seeing a career counselor because I really had no idea what I wanted to do. Nothing really sounded good to me. And uh, a couple of things kept coming up over and over and over as I went through all of the, this aptitude testing and workbooks, and they put you through a battery of tests.
Hmm.
That was archaeology and photography.
Really?
Yeah, I mean there were different things that would come up, and there were different certain characteristics that outdoorsy, active, technical, all this stuff were things that I was going to definitely enjoy. But those were the two careers that they thought, oh, you should do this, and I really thought that was horrible.
The what was horrible about it?
Well, they both seemed equally unreachable. I just thought that's crazy. I'm not going to go
Okay.
back to school and obtain a PhD and become, Howard Carter, opening tombs in Egypt. This doesn't seem realistic to me. And the photography seemed equally preposterous. I just thought that's crazy. I'm not a photographer. I'm kind of a hobbyist. I have a film camera, but I do vacation photos. And
Mm.
as much as I think that's really, really cool, I just thought that's just utterly unattainable. But basically, I had a good career counselor, and she looked at me and just unblinkingly said, "Why not?" And I had a hard time answering that question. I started obsessing on photography. A few weeks later, I wrote a letter of resignation and hung out my shingle as a photographer.
No way.
Yeah, and it was hard. I mean, I had no clients. I had absolutely no experience whatsoever. I did not own a digital camera. Um, it was crazy.
Talk about taking a dive.
Yeah,
It's not just 1 foot in the pool. You just went in.
yeah. I just went in, and I do that, uh, and then suffer the consequences. And definitely there were consequences. I mean, the first 2 years were incredibly lean for me. I had a little bit of a nest egg that I brought with me, and I blew through that very quickly. And so I'm coming around to answering your question, which is, there came a point where I was really looking for anything I could do to earn a dollar to pay my rent. Uh, and so, casting around, you really quickly drop all of the fantasies about I'm going to be a travel photographer and National Geographic is going to call me next week. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That pretty much dissipates right away. And I don't know really exactly what prompted me. I started shooting stuff. I was shooting. Oh, I know what I was doing. I was stringing for the San Francisco Chronicle,
Hmm.
and they were sending me out to shoot hotels and resorts all over the Bay Area for peanuts. Uh,
Okay, it's all coming together now.
yeah, exactly. So I found myself shooting these hotels and these beds and breakfasts, and it was pretty cool. I was doing a lot of neat stuff again for like almost no money, but
Right.
and I thought, hey, real estate, I could shoot real estate. Somewhere along the line, something planted that idea.
Hmm.
And so I started looking into it from that end, and that turned out to work really well.
Oh.
Financially, it worked really well. And it also turned out to be something I was really, really interested in doing. It just, I liked it a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
So shooting interiors turned out to it was just luck that, there was money to be made. And I do think that real estate photography specifically is extremely accessible as far as a good point to break into professional photography.
Totally. I totally agree.
Much more so than, for example, fashion or
Hmm.
sure, things like travel and product photography. But yeah, so but it just seems to scratch an itch that I have, in that I find it fulfilling as well.
That's fantastic. That's a really interesting story, and I'm really glad you shared that because I have a feeling that there are, about 100,000 other people out there that might share in that kind of experience that you were just talking about. Your past career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think if I'd overanalyzed it, it would never have happened. I didn't do any of the things that you're supposed to do. I certainly didn't do any of the things that my career counselor told me to do, which is, you're supposed to take people out for informational interviews, and, test the waters. You're supposed to have a business plan. I didn't have a business plan. My business plan was to write a letter of resignation. I mean,
I like that. I like that style.
but if I had done all those things, I think I would have scared myself out of it. I think I really would have very quickly talked myself right out of it, and I would be. I'd be managing a Denny's right now or something.
Wow. Oh, wow. Well, speaking of kind of diving right in and all doing that stuff, on the podcast, I really try and stress the importance of business skills and business. And I wanted to ask you, what sort of marketing strategies worked for you, not just in the very beginning, but kind of overall?
Sure. Photography is funny because I think a lot of it has to do with personal relationships as much as the photos themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely have to be able to deliver a quality product, but there are so many photographers, financially successful photographers out there, who really are pretty mediocre in terms of their work. And I'm not trashing on the other photographers. I'm just kind of pointing out that what they do have is the ability to really establish good rapport with clients and make the clients feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole debate about photography being good enough and whether you want to go beyond that at all. But clearly there's more to the package than just the pictures that you're producing. So again, I think I'm getting long-winded in terms of what you're asking me, but it's the personality behind the photos that counts at least as much as the photos themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that said, in terms of marketing, I try to keep it as personal as possible. I've never done, like a mass mailing kind of thing. I'm much more likely to do targeted marketing to a few select individuals that I've done some research on, and keeping it at that scale allows me to do a lot of follow-up phone calls, a lot of personal emails. I have started doing direct mail this year, and I'm hand addressing envelopes.
Okay.
Just because I really feel like, first of all, I don't want to be the guy that's sending out stuff with a computer-generated label on it.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, I just feel like that's the first step in making somebody feel like, oh, he wrote that by hand. It's got to be important. I'm going to have to read this. And, clearly he didn't send out 1,500 of these.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All country.
Yeah, when I go through the mailbox and I see a handwritten, it catches my eye immediately. So I really like that strategy. I hadn't even thought about that. Gosh.
Well, it's a lot of extra work, but, when you're doing these things, you're hoping to pick up one client. You can get one client out of the effort. Last mailing was about 170 postcards. If I get one client out of that, I'll have earned my money back, printing and my time, easily. So
well, that's great.
It's worth it. So what I'm doing in terms of marketing strategies, again, is over the years, I've built up a mailing list of people that I've had contact with or that have been referred to me, or that have come to me. And I keep a regular email campaign going. In fact, that's what I'm working on this afternoon is curating the latest gallery of images. And about every 3 months, I send out an email of new work. I collect the best stuff that I've shot over the previous 3 months, make a little a portfolio out of it, and I send a link to that portfolio out to my mailing list. And it's just a way of saying, hey, it doesn't say, hey, I've got a special going this month. It doesn't say, please hire me. It doesn't say anything. It's got my contact information, but all it really says is, please take a look at my pictures. Here's the link. I'd love to have you look at my pictures.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
take a look, and it keeps you fresh in their mind.
keeps you fresh in their mind. Some of these people have never hired me before. They're on my list, because I've gotten their business card at some point, but they've never actually hired me. And some of them, never will. But it's called drip marketing, and it just puts my name in front of them every 3 months. And these are the same people that will receive a postcard from me from time to time, whether I drop it off by hand or put it in the mail. And so the day comes at some point, and it may be 5 years from now, that they need a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Then suddenly, deep inside their brain, is going to come that spark. And, oh, there's that guy that keeps emailing. Who is that? Oh, yeah, that guy. And
Yeah.
because of the name recognition, just because of sheer having been around for 3 years maybe, then I'm going to get a call from those people.
That's fantastic. I really like that approach. And I was going to ask you, in addition to, well, first I should say, it sounds like you have better than obviously a good sense of business, but it sounds like you have like a strategy and almost an intentional direction where you were, where you are, and where you want to go. Um, you know, just how I see it. I don't know.
Well, no, I think that's probably true. I mean, I joke. Well, I guess I was serious. I didn't have a business plan when I first got going on this. However, I'm much more organized these days. So I have a marketing calendar. I do have goals. I don't have a document. I mean, a real business plan is going to be a small book, and I don't have that. I have to admit, but I do have pretty concrete goals. I have short-term, medium, and long-term goals, and some action items for getting there. Uh, I was about to say something really profound on that,
Well,
but,
I'll follow that up with a confession. I don't have a business plan either, but don't tell anyone, okay?
well, the truth is, most people don't. I think most photographers absolutely don't.
Yeah.
But I did very quickly come around on that point, and I had a business background, which definitely helped. And I just did an enormous amount of reading, and I mean, God, the internet is a university of its own. So the
Totally.
reasons are absolutely out there.
I had out of curiosity, have you seen a growing competition in the area of real estate photography since
Yeah.
you've kind of arrived on the scene?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a genre that's just now coming into its own. When I first started doing this, and I've only been doing it, by the way, this is a short-term project for me. I've been doing real estate photography for 3 years, I think.
Okay.
Um, and the competition when I started was definitely with a point and shoot. It was with the client's own camera. There wasn't another photographer. It was just that no one had ever heard of real estate photography at
Okay.
that. So really, it was a market awareness battle, I guess is what I'm saying. Now, that's still the case to some extent, but it's becoming much more widely known, so that I don't have to explain to people what the hell I'm talking about. It's more a question of, look, you're not doing it. What's the matter with you? All your colleagues are doing it. So wake up. Or and now I'm actually starting to see some actual physical competition in my market, and so that's really interesting. I've for the first time I've lost a client
Oh,
to a lower priced competitor, so that's kind of interesting. But really, I mean, overall, I think that it's a good thing. There's still a huge untapped potential out there, and I think that the more photographers there are, there's going to come a point where it's going to commodify and kind of get driven to the bottom again. But right now, we're still just spreading the market awareness of it wider and wider, and there's still plenty of pie out there.
right. I couldn't agree with you more. I was about to say I feel in complete agreement about this, and in the sense that there are there's not a market for it. If that's even is that right for me to say that there's
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and this is good. Realize I'm speaking from the standpoint of the San Francisco Bay Area, which tends to be ahead of the curve on a lot of things.
hmm
Um, other areas like Seattle, for example, is saturated with real estate photographers, and the prices have held up pretty well in Seattle. So,
That's good.
so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, there are areas where it's still an unheard of genre.
Right. I'm always curious to see where it'll be in, 10, 15 years from now when every real estate agent has their go-to, photographer.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, 10 or 15 years, you want to know my prediction and write this down
Okay.
so you can humiliate me later.
Okay.
But it's going to consolidate. I mean, what's going to happen is that it's going to be it's not. I think with the advent of HDR technology, which is still in its infancy, but
Hmm.
this is going to be the future. It's going to get more and more automated. So you're going to see the players like, and who knows who they'll be. Right now, it's what CirclePix and OBO, and there's this O2V outfit and a couple others. You're going to see them really get things figured out. Vicasso, that's another one.
Hmm.
They're really going to figure out how to do it and how to be consistent with it. And it's going to consolidate to the point where the market's dominated by a few large players. And then there's always going to be room for specialists. There's always going to be room for somebody who's offering something that's just a cut above. Now, what that's going to look like, we don't know yet. But and that's honestly that's the niche that I've been going for from day one. I'm definitely trying to occupy the highest niche there is.
Right.
How successful I am at that, I don't know yet. But I know I'm not the cheapest guy in town, and I'm not lowering the rates. So I'm
Right. Right.
definitely okay with that.
Hey, that's great. Moving on, I wanted to ask you about your website and your blog. First, what role does your website play in your business? And kind of a follow-up on that is, how has it evolved since you first began?
Totally. I first of all remember that I started off with no operating capital whatsoever,
Hmm.
and you had to teach me how to use Skype, so you can imagine. Didn't build my own website either. I don't have those. Still don't have. I hate that stuff. Actually, I hate it. Hate it. Hate it. So what I did, I taught myself Dreamweaver way back at the beginning because I knew I had to have a website, and so I taught myself enough Dreamweaver to throw up an HTML thing, which was hideous. And I knew it was hideous at the time, but it was the best that I could do. So I put it up there so that I could say, yeah, I got a website and I got a domain name. I mean, I think if you're a startup photographer, you must own your own domain name. You can't be operating on a Gmail account and a SmugMug, or a Flickr portfolio. You have to be, Mike Muriello Photography or, propertyphotos.com or something like that. So I had my website and I had my domain names. I knew I needed that, but it was so embarrassing. I never consciously pointed people at it. I was able to generate a decent looking web gallery through Lightroom, and I would put those up, and that would be basically my portfolio. But I really felt like my poor website held me back for a long, long time because I wasn't willing to put myself out there in front of, for example, magazines or even higher end clients because it was going to make me look bad. So I finally scraped up enough money, and I went with LiveBooks. I purchased a LiveBooks website. They had a sale last year, and got one that I'm pretty happy with the looks of and the functionality of it. So in terms of how it's played into my business, that's why this year I'm making a much bigger push to expand my client base and upgrade it in a major way, because I've got the first thing anyone's going to do is look at your website. It's the very first thing they're going to do. And if your website, as mine used to, screams amateur, or just low end player, you're not going to be taken seriously. So I've been able to really kind of break out the big marketing push now, because I feel like I've got a respectable looking presence behind me.
Well, I wanted to say I heard everything you had said about your website and how it evolved, and then I also heard you couldn't hear me saying, "Oh, really?" But you were talking about the changes that you were going to make to your website, and I'm kind of curious as to what's in store.
Oh! Did I say that? I don't have any major changes. I mean, I definitely try to refresh the content fairly regularly. One thing is I'm starting to lose a little bit of the. Who put it really well was I was reading a blog post from Chase Jarvis, and he was talking about the drama of the portfolio and kind of letting go of that. So I tried to take a page from that book and just I threw up a portfolio of iPhone photos, which turns out to be one of the more popular portfolios on my website. I don't know if it should be a source of embarrassment to me or not, but
that probably makes you frustrated. You know.
I feel good about it. I mean, I really feel good about it because I love that portfolio myself.
Uh-huh.
I've got one up there that's just basically a messy collection of pictures that I like that really have nothing to do with me professionally. So I'm trying to have fun with it. The blog is the big creative piece for me. I just launched a blog in what was it, end of July, I think, beginning of August, end of July, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that has just been a huge creative outlet for me. I'm having a ball with it. So I've got a list of ideas for that.
That was my question for you was why blog, or what is it you're blogging about? I mean, I've read it. You know, don't get me wrong, I've read it. I'm asking you why blog, and what is it that you want to blog about, and how does that play into everything that you do?
Yeah, I'm still figuring that out. You know, I think that I started the blog in part because I've always enjoyed writing, first of all. So I know that I'm going to like doing that. They tell you got to blog. You know, if you read all the advice on how to get your search engine optimization going and how to get your name out there as a photographer, they say you need a good website and you got to blog. Like, okay, blog. What I'm doing with it, I haven't figured out yet. I haven't figured out who I'm writing to. First of all, I've always assumed that my audience was other photographers, and I think that the majority of it is other photographers. But I've been surprised a few times lately. I've got clients that are reading it. Oh. So I've shown up for jobs, and big important jobs with big important clients, and discovered that, we loved your iPhone gallery, and then we started reading your blog. And in fact, I've even gotten clients. I did my last print marketing piece that went out. I got an email back and it said, "Hey, we got your postcard in the mail. It looks great. We checked your website. We love your work. Then we went and we read your blog and we saw the article where you were talking about lighting, and we're like, wow, that's just what we were looking for in the photographer. We're going to be calling you real soon." And I was like, oh my God, this is like the trifecta of marketing here.
That's phenomenal. So they I'm assuming they put together an image of you as a human being almost, rather than just this artist who's putting your images on the web.
I think that's a big piece of it. That goes back to what I was talking about in terms of establishing rapport with clients. It's not just a cha-ching, business thing. There's a personal aspect to running a photography business in terms of your clients. And I think that goes towards that. But also they're finding out whether I'm a good fit for them photographically. I mean, the portfolio can only take you so far. They want to know, how does this guy work? What's it like when he's in the field? What's his philosophy about interiors photography? And it's at certain levels in certain genres, and particularly like interior design is one that comes to mind immediately. Anything with design, people, they're really into that stuff. They want to know what is going on inside your head.
And now they know before they even talk to you.
Exactly. They're able to read the blog and kind of get into this stuff and get a good sense of that before they waste time calling me. And really, the first time you hire somebody, in a creative endeavor like this, you're taking a big risk. You're taking a huge risk. Right. I mean, the dollar amounts are large, but also the amount of time and energy that they're putting into the shoot on their end is really huge. So they want to know for sure if they're working with the right person or not. And that's where, again, I was really surprised though to discover that they had dug deep into my blog and they were talking knowledgeably about articles that I wrote. And I thought, oh my God, I gotta be careful, because someone's actually reading this stuff, and it's going to start mattering. So I haven't figured out yet. I could definitely write for an audience, and people would read it and respond to it, and I'd feel good about it. But I'm following the advice that I got from a friend of mine, which was to write about whatever tickles me at that moment, and just let it really be me. So, like I said, I keep a list on my iPhone of stuff that I want to put on the blog, and it's getting long. I can't really keep up with the list. So there will definitely be new material showing up for a while now.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic to hear. I can't wait to read it.
It's a ton of fun. I can tell you that.
Hey, switching gears, lighting. You mentioned lighting just in brief in that last little bit there, but I actually wanted to talk to you about lighting. Well, I wanted you to talk to us about lighting, obviously. I guess two questions, just like your website. How do you describe your style of lighting, and how has that evolved over time? And just go at it. I don't know.
Sure. Uh, yeah. Well, obviously, I use a lot of it. I'm kind of known for that.
Right.
Um, I would say, and this is what I get from my clients too, that this is how they describe me, is that my style of lighting is crisp and clean and bright.
Mm.
Uh, Sometimes other photographers have described me as high key. I don't think it's high key at all. It is definitely bright and crisp. So a lot of interiors photography, especially in the bad old days of film, it all had that amber yellow hue. It was just suffused with amber yellow and tended to be a little soft overall. The edges, were always just a little bit soft. Everything kind of had that dreamy characteristic to it. Now, with the advent of digital, a lot of the amber yellow has started to disappear. If you start looking at, if you look back through Shelter magazines and Architectural Digest and those guys, or get some books, you'll see this. It's evolving towards much more accurate color. And that's someplace where I think I am now is at a place where I'm delivering much more accurate color. And lighting is how you accomplish that in large measure.
Right. And you said you use a lot of it. Can you be a little more specific?
Yeah, I mean, just about every photograph I make has some added light, some artificial light. And again, I'll do it even if I don't need it for brightness purposes. If it's as adequately lit as it is, looking at it, I'll often pop just a little bit of flash into it anyway, just to give me more accurate color. It evens out all the competing color casts from all the competing light sources. I've got daylight coming into the window, that's one color temperature. I have fluorescents that are, a whole other thing. I've got tungsten someplace else. I've got the fact that the light is bounced off the green grass outside, and it's all these factors coming into the room. So popping a little bit of predictable 5,500 degree Kelvin flash into the scene tends to even everything out. It dilutes the soup, if you will,
right,
and gives you a consistent flavor across the board. You can do a lot more with it in post just by doing that. So almost every photo gets some flash. I'm not going to say every photo. But I also, again, it's part of my style is to not have dark corners and dark distant rooms and dark balconies and all that stuff. I tend to go ahead and try to achieve a control over almost every part of my images.
That's great. That's great. And when you started, you already said you just went into it. I was going to say, how did your lighting change over time? Did it start with just one flash, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I built a kit. I started with two SB24s and a what was it, a Canon 430, I think, on the camera, and then just started adding flashes from there. In terms of how it's evolved, I mean, I used to light the crap out of everything and just overdoing it. And now I'm going to back off from what I just said, but I am allowing more and more and more ambient into my shots.
Okay.
The longer I go, the longer my shutter speeds are getting. And so I'm relying much more on ambient and really only using the flash to control things rather than trying to overpower the ambient every single picture.
Right. I think it's really important.
I used to replace the ambient pretty much. Just completely replace the ambient. And if you look at my early stuff, I look at it now and I'm just like, oh my God, you just flash the crap out of it, dude.
Oh, I feel the same way. I look back at my stuff and I say, why did they hire me?
Let's not even go there, but you can totally see where the ambient is creeping back into my pictures over the last couple of years in a big way, and hopefully for the better. So flash is much more subtle, and it's ironically I use more lights now than ever before. But instead of having them all at full blast, they're all set at really low power outputs, and they're all just doing very small, discrete, subtle things.
I gotcha.
Rather than trying to just nuke something.
That's good to know. Now, speaking of lighting, and I wanted to kind of add a segment to our interview thing that we've never done before. By the way, Scott, in case you didn't know, you're our first interview.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
So I'm the guinea pig.
Yeah, you're the guinea pig. Yeah, I hope.
Well, once you get it right with me, then you can get on with the important people.
That's exactly how I'm billing this one. Yeah, I was gonna say I pulled up 3 of your photos from your website, and I wanted to ask you to kind of walk us through what you were thinking, how you framed the shot, how you lit the shot, what was going on in your mind, and how did that photo turn out to be that way? So let's take a look at.
I was thinking, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take a look at photo 1.
Yeah, the first thing that I saw, this is actually in not Oakland, but Piedmont, California. The first thing that I noticed when I walked into this room was the fireplace and the cool skylight that's over the fireplace. And then the next thing that I saw was the way that the designer had mirrored that with the wingback chair in the foreground. And then pop some really vibrant color in the paintings on either side of the fireplace, because otherwise the room is pretty stark. I mean, that was like ebony wood floor, and then you've got the stark white wall with the white brick and the white ceiling and the white skylight.
Right.
It's a pretty interesting room from that standpoint. I thought the designer did a really good job with it. So I knew I wanted to find an angle that was going to show that skylight really well. I wanted to have the shapes of the chairs kind of mirrored with that. And I actually didn't achieve what I was trying to do here. I wanted the chimney to be blown out as it disappeared into the skylight.
Oh, okay.
But I wasn't shooting tethered. I was just looking at the back of the camera to make test shots. And on the back of the camera, it totally looked like it was blown out just as the brick, disappeared up above the plane of the ceiling, which is what I wanted. Then I got home and I realized I had slightly underexposed the thing, and I had detail going all the way up. But whatever, that was a subtle thing. There's a fair amount of light in this one because I had to expose for that incredibly bright spot at the top of the chimney there, in that skylight. I had to add quite a bit of light to this scene. So this is not one of those almost all ambient, just a little bit of flash pictures. I had to light most of the room.
And speaking of lighting, the windows, did they pose a challenge to you for reflections of those lights?
Not so much. No. I was able to work around. It's all predictable geometry, as far as that goes. As long as I didn't have anything out to my left, I was okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I don't know what's to the left. I don't know what's behind you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I probably would have been happy to put a light over there, but this wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can certainly do things with multiple exposures and fixing your windows digitally. I just always strive to get it in camera.
Gotcha.
As possible. I hate kind of getting the sense I'm not a computer jockey. So I have some skills with it, but I resent every minute that I spend sitting in front of a computer. So
okay.
I try to be behind the camera as much as possible. So I definitely will spend time in the field to get it right rather than doing it at home. And that's not a swipe at the guys that do it in Photoshop. I mean, the point is to come up with a good picture. That's the goal. However you do it however you want. You work with the skill that you have and with the interest that you have.
Right.
And be happy. The point is to make great photographs.
No,
so
that's good advice. That is really good advice. All right, let's take a look at photo number 2, and I think that's the one. It's the kitchen, and I think in the blog you had mentioned about using this on postcards.
Got it. All right, this is actually a pretty old picture. I made that one in 2007, I believe. So that's an older one. Yeah, it came out pretty successfully. Let's see, what did I do with this? It's a funny story associated with this place, and so I can't look at this picture without being dominated by this anecdote.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't know this. Yeah, I was looking at for a while. I was going to film some training videos, and with a friend of mine, and this was a location that we thought of to use as a training location because it was a new construction house. It was built on spec. It didn't have an owner it didn't have a tenant to deal with, just the builder. And we talked to them about it, and they thought it might be okay, but then they started getting really weird, and they said, well, we need to know that you're not. They thought we were going to film pornography. And they said, how do we know you're not filming pornography? And it was the weirdest thing I'd ever experienced. We dropped them. We were just like, this is ridiculous.
Oh, man.
Anyway, you can cut that.
Oh, or should we?
Yeah, right. Anyway, I love the kitchen. I think this is a cool shot. What I really love about this is the composition, because you have that center island kind of jutting through at an angle, and the light. And this was the ambient happened to be perfect for this. This was a real estate shoot. I had an hour to be in this place and come up with 15 photos. So it's not like you can gauge the time of day on these things. You just there when you're there, and you go with what you have. And as it turns out, what I had was great. I mean, the ambient situation was utterly perfect for this. The reflections in the granite really, really work well, I think, for this composition, in terms of the way the oven is reflected in the granite, the window is repeated.
Right.
Everything is mirrored down there, and it really draws your eye out of the foreground and into the background. But when I look at this picture, I tend to go, I go straight up the right side, because that's the access to the room, is to go right up towards the refrigerator, and then I come down onto the surface of the granite there, and from there I go up to the far corner where the plant is. And a successful image is gonna hold your eye and take you through the picture that way,
right,
in discrete steps, and not let you kind of fall off the photo on one side or the other. It should be composed and framed in such a way that it's pretty well self-contained. And keeps your eye traveling around a little bit. So I think this particular picture does a good job of that.
No, I really like the composition. And I was going to say about the windows in the back, I don't even mind that they're blown out. It doesn't detract anything, in my opinion anyway. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, actually, let me talk about that, because I would not even call those blown out. I think a window should be overexposed by anywhere from a stop to 2 stops. The point where I draw the line is where you lose detail. If you look at the window, look at the extreme left edge of that photo, and under the chandelier, and you can see where there's a mullion, that thin vertical separator that's dividing 2 panes of glass. You can just barely see it, but it's there. The point where you've overblown your windows is when you start losing those.
Oh, okay.
You have crisp edges on the frames, the mullions, the muntins, all the little components of the window, then you've gone too far. But unless there's something truly recognizable out there, you do not need, and you shouldn't, in my opinion, in most cases, pull in every last bit of detail. I mean, there's a place for it if it complements the room. But a lot of times you're shooting a beige box, and then you've got this incredibly vibrant window, and that takes away from what you're actually photographing, which is the architecture.
Okay.
It attracts the eye too much because it's too vivid. Now, around here, we have some recognizable landmarks that do appear outside the windows. The skyline of San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge. Pretty much, if I'm shooting in a house and I've got a view of the Golden Gate Bridge, I'm going to make sure you can see it outside that window, because that's a major, major point,
right,
for everybody. But if it's just foliage, or blue sky or just prettiness out there, and certainly if it's the neighbor's house or a factory, or who knows what ugliness is out there, you don't want detail. And in this case, you can tell that it's foliage. There's enough color there that that's just a kind of pleasant greenery. And at that point, everything you need to know about what's outside.
Gotcha.
I don't need to have any level of detail beyond that. Had I exposed those darker, that would have hurt the composition of the photo.
I was going to say, you might detract from the focus of what you're really trying to say.
Exactly right. I want the dark, contrasty stuff to be the granite, basically, in this kitchen.
All right. Let's take a look at the last one, which is that bathroom that's like pure white.
Yeah, it's another oldie but a goodie. You pulled some old stuff out. Now this I look at now and I'm like, yeah, that's high key. Totally get it. And that is what I was going for, because what I wanted to point up was the color contrast between the white on white of the bathroom and the blue green vividness of the swimming pool outside.
Right. Okay.
And so here was a case where I definitely wanted people to know what was out there. It's still not, it's still overexposed out there a little bit. But the whole point of the shot was actually to show that this opens up out to this pool area, and it really has the feel of a resort bathroom.
I was
Uh,
gonna, yeah. Well, sorry, when
well,
I was,
just one other thing I was going to point out is that this was a serious lighting challenge for me, especially at that time. I mean, I think I probably, and I don't remember exactly what I did. This is too long ago, but I'm sure I would do it differently now. But I was definitely struggling to light this at all. So this is definitely a shot where there's a lot of ambient at play.
that was my question actually. I was going to say I feel like this is one of those situations where the light either just plays nice or it's a nightmare, and I don't know which one it was. Looking at this photo, I don't know. Now, what did you find yourself doing to make it all work out for you?
Well, as I remember, I tried a lot of different compositions. The composition that you choose really dictates the lighting to a large extent. And there's plenty of times when I look at something and my A composition that I really want to shoot turns out to be way too hard.
Hmm.
I mean, all things are possible in this world to some extent or another. But again, when you've got a limited time to work, you got to cut your losses, and sometimes just changing to composition B suddenly opens up a lot of possibilities. And I think that that's what's happened here. In an ideal world, I would have been preferred to be out in front of the vanity so that I could see the fronts of the cabinets that are in the sinks on the left side. Doing so, though, and I think I was relying to some extent on an on-camera flash for this photo. So doing that was creating a big reflection issue in the French doors.
Right.
And so I had to have the camera moved back behind the front of that cabinet, and that suddenly solved a lot of problems for me. Again, I would do this very differently now. I'm sure I would not settle on this composition just because I'm a better photographer now than I was then.
Right.
But that was clearly part of the decision making for me at the time, just in terms of what I was able to accomplish quickly with lighting.
Great.
And sadly, that's the trade-off that we find ourselves making a lot.
No, I totally agree. There's only so much time in a day, and not only that, just like you had said before, you were given an hour to get 15 shots. Ah, gosh, the pressure is enormous when you're given those sorts of constraints. You know.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, you have to analyze the ambient, and even over the course of an hour or an hour and a half, and I give myself a much more generous amount of time now, but it's still a tight constraint. The ambient will change, so you want to be watching, the sun, know where it's going to be by the end of your shoot, because it could be that what looks like an utterly impossible situation when you first walk in an hour and a half could be very, very different. And so it's good to just kind of mentally make a note of what's going to be happening towards the end of your shoot, and then you can plan things accordingly.
Great stuff. Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about something not so real estate photography, but more of the agent portraits. I was, scrubbing your website, just checking it out, and I found that you had done some agent portraits. And my question was, not so much lighting, not so much anything else, but how did you sell agents on the idea of having an environmental portrait? And I ask you that with the notion that I'm having a really hard time with that. A lot of the agents that I work with, they want the cookie cutter, their portrait on a muslin background, and that's it.
Yeah.
They cannot do anything else because that will be different.
I think that still accounts for a lot of people, but I've been lucky. Again, this may be regional specific, I don't know, but I've been working with people who are real estate agents are starting to market themselves pretty strongly. So I actually shot a full ad campaign here locally for an agent that was, in his own words, he was rebranding himself, and he produced a multi-page magazine-style brochure.
No way.
That was all photography. There's very little copy in it whatsoever, and he's not even in a lot of the pictures. I mean, this was a ton of fun. We set up a lot of different photos. His signature photo, the one that really features him most prominently, and this is what's replacing not his headshot. He's doing a traditional headshot. But in terms of the opening brochure photo that people always do, where they show themselves standing in the doorway of a beautiful house,
Yeah.
right? They've got their arms extended, like "Come on in,"
Right.
And it's just a massive cheese factor. So our response to that was to flip it upside down, and we put him on the roof of the house. So he's sitting on the roof. in a suit and tie with a laptop. I loaned him my laptop, which was kind of scary. And so he looks like he's sitting on the roof of this house with this fantastic view of the Bay Area in the background behind him, and all these trees and rooftops, and this gorgeous residential neighborhood below him, and he's doing his email. And we've gotten this really, really gratifying response to this photograph. It puts him in the context of real estate, but it puts him, literally on top of things. He's sort of master of all he surveys up there, and on top of the house. And I love that photo for that.
That's phenomenal. So, I was going to say this
was his whole vision, was just to do something utterly different, make people really stop and go, whoa. Who's this guy?
That's the point, right? And if there are any real estate agents listening or watching, please listen. Please be different.
So one that I think you're talking about, which is of a woman in a living room,
right?
And she's another long-term client of mine. She's fantastic and extremely photogenic. But same deal, and a slightly smaller scale, but similar project where she was producing marketing material for herself. And again, people are starting to see themselves and see the need to market themselves and brand themselves the same way that what's an example? Well, any company would have to brand itself to achieve name recognition and sort of get some associations going. Hell, Budweiser does it, right?
Yeah.
They're not so much advertising beer as they are their company,
right,
and what they're all about. So I think environmental portraits, headshots, your basic, white, gray, whatever background headshot is going to be a staple for years to come, probably always. But a certain segment of the population is starting to sort of get it in terms of much more, really a more aggressive marketing style. They're really putting themselves out there and selling themselves based on their personality.
Yeah, I find myself a little bit more attracted to that. I'm just saying, as a consumer, as a prospective home buyer, I'm more interested in someone who's a little more real, or let's just say perceives to be a little more real. Yeah.
Well, we want them to show themselves a little bit, and I think, again, my clients are starting to understand that that's what they're going to have to do, and it's a ton of fun. It's so fun.
Right. All right. So just wrapping up, the final question is, what advice would you give to somebody getting started in real estate photography?
Well, there's an online Flickr forum called the Photography for Real Estate Forum, which you can probably put a link to that in here somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's an incredible resource. So number one would be to participate in that. And the thing is, you have to put your pictures up. There's a lot of people that kind of hang out and hang back and read that forum. But what really works, and I know this because A, I've done it, and B, I've coached so many people through the process of learning the ropes on this thing, that you've got to take your best photo and throw it up there for the world to see, and people will shred you.
Right.
I mean, they're going to be nice, but they're going to say, look, you did this wrong, and you did that wrong, and you should have done this, and you should have done the other thing, and really get some critique. It will take you a long, 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 long way. You've got to be good. You have to be really good if you're going to make it in any genre of photography. I talked about people that were mediocre and getting by on their business skills, and that's fine, but it's still, mediocre is pretty good. There's a long distance between just raw amateur and mediocre. So you've got to have a good product out there. Secondly would be, with real estate photography, there's I got stuff on my blog in terms of how to get started and build a clientele. But we were just talking about portraits, and this is something that I have a hard time convincing people to do. So I'll just put a plug in for it here. Shoot headshots. Teach yourself how to shoot headshots. It's not that hard to learn. You have to practice a little bit, but headshots are, first of all, a good revenue maker for you,
mm-hmm.
And it puts you in front of people and makes you the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can organize a headshot, day at a real estate office someplace and say, okay, look, I'm going to give you guys this incredible cut rate. I'm going to shoot them for, 50, 60, or 75, whatever you can get, bucks a piece, and have 20 people come through and sit in front of my camera that day. You're going to go away with a decent day rate. and 20 people will have come and seen you work and met you and made that personal connection that we've been talking about for the last hour,
Right.
and gotten your postcard, right, and your brochure and whatever you've got to give them, and they're going to go away. You're the photographer now.
Right. I was just going to say they're not
You're
going to come
probably
to
the
you.
only photographer that they've ever dealt with, so of course they're going to.
Right. Right.
You know,
I was going to say, if you don't go out and do this sort of thing, they're not going to ring your doorbell. They're not going to call your phone. They don't even know you exist.
exactly right.
Right.
So this is a good way to put yourself out there, get in front of them, and actually make a decent paycheck at the same time. So that's something that I've been pushing lately because I don't think enough people are doing it.
Great. Well, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate the time you gave to us, and I hope the listeners appreciate it.
Hope so too, Mike. It's been fun.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Bye.